A good friend of mine, let's call him Frank, is an excellent science communicator. Frank once went to an interview for a tenured professor position and gave a job talk. As always, he presented complex scientific content in a visually accessible way and made even lay people understand his research. In fact, the students of the talk loved it and raved about Frank's talk afterwards. However, Frank did not get the job. He later found out that he didn't get the job because the people in the search committee, the people who make a decision about the job candidates, thought the presentation was too simple, too clean, too billboard. Frank did not consider his target audience. So today, let's talk about the audience of a research presentation. My name is Timo Röttger. Welcome to Simple Points. Your audience are the people you are doing this for. Those people you want to inform, to convince, or to inspire. Everything you do, you should do for them. That includes the structure of your narrative as well as the design of your slides. And you don't do it because you are selfless either. Understanding your audience better, that is, understanding their motivations and needs, that can help you achieve your own communication goals. So one of the most important first steps in preparing a presentation is thinking about your target audience. And this is really not trivial. It is difficult because more often than not, members of your audience differ in their needs, their motivations, their expectations, and even their expertise. How can we communicate successfully with so many different groups in mind? Simple answer is we can't. They care about different things. So there are two ways to deal with this. One, you prioritize your target audience and tailor your presentation toward their narrow needs and motivations. Or alternatively, you try to deliver a presentation that tries to cater to the entire audience. So let us walk through these options using a real-world academic example. In the last 5 years or so, I have been trying to convince my colleagues across the quantitative sciences to change the way they do science. Concretely, I have advocated for more transparency. Scientists should openly share their entire scientific process, and that includes their data, their materials, and their protocols. This is a somewhat polarizing request though. On the one hand, transparency, that means transparently sharing your materials, serves a greater good and allows others to critically evaluate your claims. It allows others to reuse your work, so it saves resources in the long run. But on the other hand, it allows bad actors to use your data in unintended ways, or possibly gaining rewards for your ideas or data before you can earn these rewards. It also allows others to point out potential errors in your analysis, something that on a public stage can be perceived as image damaging maybe. I'm simplifying here, of course, but the bottom line is that this kind of topic creates drastically different reactions depending on your motivation and needs. Let's make it concrete and look at 3 types of audience members. I'm using cartoon versions here, and I'm not implying that actual researchers come with these characteristics and motivations, but then again, judge for yourself. I introduce to you Professor Jones, a world-renowned researcher and absolute expert in their field. Professor Jones is somewhat resistant to drastic change in the way they work. They have played the game for a long time and know how to help their students to become successful researchers. At this point in their career, they do not actively get their hands dirty anymore. Their studies are run and analyzed by their students and postdocs. There's also Dr. Cassie, an ambitious researcher who would like to earn a tenured position. Cassie does it all. They design and execute data collection, they analyze the data, and they write up the results. Cassie is generally skeptic and needs strong empirical arguments to change their beliefs. They are pragmatic, however, and very goal-oriented, but they have not yet given up on their idealism yet. Finally, we have Noel, a second-year PhD student who is excited about research and the scientific machine. They have started to learn about the practical aspects of the scientific process, and they have found their higher calling in being a scientist to serve society at large. Okay, we can now try to target one of the 3 members or try to tailor to all of them within the same presentations. Let's walk through this. If we want to target a specific group in the audience, we should do so with purpose. So first, let's think a bit more about our audience personas. What do they care about really? What do they know? What do they want? What motivates them? What technical skills do they have? What will incite them to take action, right? Or what makes them hesitant? One way of approaching this is writing down points of support and points of resistance. And I usually just draw down an avatar and just write down what motivates them. So let's do that together, okay? Professor Jones, for example, cares about success of their students, which is mainly driven by publishing in prestigious outlets. So any argument that makes it easier for them to publish might be received well. Moreover, they are a bit resistant to change. Why change if it worked for them? And are concerned about their reputation. So we should probably discuss evidence of how sharing data can possibly strengthen one's reputation, actually. Dr. Cassie has limited time and is mostly concerned with practicalities. Everything that saves them time in the long run and improves their chance of getting a permanent position will be well received by them. So to flip it around, if we can convince Dr. Cassie that not being transparent costs them precious time, we might be able to reach them. Noel is still an idealist with little experience in how things works. They care about doing the right thing, allow science to be more credible and more useful to society. So big picture arguments about how open and transparent science benefits society at large and has potentially systemic benefits to the robustness of scientific findings, these kind of arguments are probably well received by Noel. Noel is also a bit self-conscious to make errors, so it might be useful to try to point out that transparency can help detect errors before publication. Now, with these personas in mind, I might give a presentation in front of a department. My goal is to convince the audience to take action and change the way things are done, being more transparent with their research. While it is great to have support from Noel and the other students, the decision makers, that is, those people who decide how the labs are run, are often the more senior colleagues like Professor Jones. However, while Professor Jones is technically in charge, Dr. Cassie is practically the executing researcher in the lab in most scenarios. So pitching my arguments tailored to Dr. Cassie might be the most successful strategy. If I, however, give a workshop for a graduate school, for example, with mostly students in the room, I might want to present ethical arguments in order to inspire them to change the way that they do science. So I hope you see it is worth thinking carefully about your audience and their needs in order to identify the critical group within your audience. When the stakes are high, it's worth the effort, really, because it means you can customize the way you communicate with their preference in mind. If we decide to target one group in a mixed audience scenario, it can be helpful to manage expectations and let your audience know what you will be focusing on and that you are aware that there might be other angles and other needs that you won't address. We could say, for example, something like, I'm aware that there are some folks here who would like to know more about the practical benefits of sharing data, but today I would like to stay on a higher level and convince you that the research ecosystem at large benefits from more transparency. Alternatively, you could take the buffet approach, that is, offering a little bit for everyone. If we do that, we can help the audience by recognizing and calling out differences. It is important to find overlap and connect people with the big picture. Again, we can signal our awareness that there are different audience members by calling out audience parts when they should pay attention to particular parts of the content. But be clear what success can reasonably look like in a mixed audience scenario. Acknowledge what you can reasonably accomplish in that setting, in which pieces should be broken out and shared separately in a more targeted way. In many situations, you can keep the more targeted arguments in your back pocket for small group conversations after your presentation. Now, no discussion about mixed audience scenarios is complete without mentioning a very particular difficult scenario that I mentioned earlier, the job talk.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
At a job talk, you usually showcase your research and your qualities as a potential colleague in front of the whole department. In many academic systems, the job talk is probably the most important presentation in your professional career. In combination with your interview, the job talk often plays a major role in hiring decisions. Remember Frank. Frank targeted the wrong part of the audience and it cost him the job. Let us think about the audience at a job talk. They're often people from all career levels. They're students, they're temporary and permanent researchers, as well as tenured professors. More than ever, we need to think carefully about that audience. Again, students might benefit from a streamlined and very accessible high-level presentation that takes their limited technical knowledge into account, while our tenured colleagues might be more interested in the gory details. They're experts and do not need another bird's eye introduction to the topic. But keep in mind that they're also senior colleagues with different academic backgrounds. Some might be experts in the area of your research, others might be familiar with the area, and yet others might come from an entirely different discipline. So do we want to pitch our narrative to a broad audience here, catering to different needs and expectations, or do we want to target a specific group, like the actual decision makers, the actual hiring committee, who will decide over the fate of the candidates? They might care less for very accessible presentations. They don't want simple stories. Keep in mind, they are tenured professors with many years of experience. They've seen it all and probably expect a certain level of granularity and technical details. So common advice is to offer a short big picture introduction to draw in those colleagues who are not experts in your particular research area, and then zoom in to showcase your expertise on the topic with a lot of detail. But do not forget to zoom out again to connect the gory details to the bigger picture at the end in order for everyone in the target audience to find a certain level of closure. Beyond these high-level considerations, we mustn't forget to think about practical considerations. What is the expected level of formality, for example? Students might be excited by memes and by pop culture references. Professors might consider these forms of media not appropriate for the occasion, not serious enough, for example. What is the methodological culture like? Is the audience used to qualitative work, or do they expect detailed quantitative analyses, including complex data visualizations? All of these are important questions to ask in advance in order to plan your presentation and target the right people in the room. Giving a strong presentation requires more than that, of course, but too little thought about your audience can doom your presentation from the get-go. Our protagonist from the beginning, Frank, learned from this experience and delivered his next job talk with the right target audience in mind, and got the job. Be like Frank and get a head start by considering your audience in advance. I'm curious, what aspects of an academic audience do you think is most important to keep in mind? What is your experience with mixed audiences? Leave a comment below and let me know. And if you like this content, make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I hope I see you next time.